me deliver a baby. I'm sure I can analyze football. Yes. Right? Like, it's not that complicated. And so I think we need to go to a place where men aren't feeling threatened by women who want to exist in those spaces. And I think, again, you're still seeing women who are creeping into those arenas, but we need to just kind of like be able to push the door down. And what's that going to take? It's going to take executives who aren't scared about their own livelihood, about their own job security, who are willing to take a chance on, you know, some really exceptional, talented women, and then those exceptional, talented women succeed and help open the doors for other women. You know, we have to rely on these men in powerful positions to say, you know, it's about time we had somebody doing this. It's why I always say, you know, the women like Doris Burke out there who are, you know, kind of entrenched in these male dominated spaces really deserve all of the credit, all of our admiration, because, you know, they're doing God's work out there, right? Trying to lead the way for the rest of us.
I was on a call with Sam Rappaport, like a Zoom women in sports call with her like a couple weeks ago. And she's like, the day that we can stop saying, oh, the first assistant NFL coach that's a woman, or, you know, NBA or whatever it is, the day we can just like literally hire a woman and not have to say the first woman or the third or the fifth, that's when we know that we're breaking down the doors. So I'm looking forward to that day when the door is completely shut down in our life. But okay, I have some rapid fire questions. So what is this special talent that you have?
A special talent. I always tell people that I can say the alphabet backwards faster than most people can say it forward. Funny story, when I was younger, I thought that if you got pulled over for a sobriety test, that police would make you say the alphabet backwards. So I was like, oh, well then, I'm just going to memorize the alphabet backwards. So would you like to hear the alphabet backwards?
I'm ready.
Okay, so I had to teach myself this, but it goes ZYXWVUT SRQPONM LKJIHGFEDCBA. And I practiced it so much that I can say it really fast, which is ZYXWVUT SRQPONM LKJIHGFEDCBA. Which, again, I can usually beat people who are doing it forward.
You could definitely beat me, for sure.
They stop saying the ABCs like midway through because they've been listening to me, and then I end up winning anyway.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. You definitely beat me. Okay, favorite player ever, any sport?
Favorite player ever, any sport. Okay, so when I was a kid growing up, my mom was a huge Andre Dawson fan. He was a member of the Chicago Cubs when we were kids, Montreal Expos as well, but Cubs when I was growing up. And she was such a huge fan of his, and then it kind of like bled down to me. I didn't really know a ton about him. As I got older, I started to learn about him. Awesome guy. But I have to say that it's my favorite player is Anthony Rizzo. We did a feature with him a couple years ago, and for all of his talent, and he's extraordinary at his position. Like, let's be clear, he's a tremendous athlete. He's a remarkable person. And just getting to know him a little bit, getting to know his family a little bit, his wife, Emily, he's the type of person that when you're around them, there's like this aura of goodness, and you can't help but just like have this magnetic pull to the person that he is. You're seeing now, even with like the quarantine and the shelter in place, that his charity is doing remarkable things to like give back to the community. I've seen on his social that they've been giving meals to healthcare workers, and they have been providing masks to people, just like any way through his Anthony Rizzo Foundation that he can give back to the community. And in my experience with him, it's completely organic. It doesn't feel strategic. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is a tax break that we need to take advantage of. It feels like a guy who just wants to be known as more than a professional athlete, as more than a baseball player. And so every opportunity I get, I will sing his praises and hope to spread that reputation.
I love that. And something that viewers don't know about you.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what people don't know about me. I do take pride in being pretty authentic. I try to be, open and vulnerable and talk about the challenges that I've had. I've talked about the fact that I was divorced 10 years ago and how painful that was. Being a single mom in this industry, working these, ridiculously challenging hours while having a young son, bringing him to work with me at times, being told I couldn't bring him to work with me, like all of these, push, pull in the industry. When I was in Chicago even, my son occasionally I would have trouble finding daycare or childcare because I would work the midnight shift. And so he would come to work with me. We had a beanbag chair that would go underneath my desk. He would sit in the beanbag chair and play his iPad until he fell asleep. And then when I would finish my show, I'd scoop him up, put him in the car, take him home and tuck him into bed. I don't think that those are things that people don't necessarily know about me, but I think it's important to be as honest about the challenges that I've faced in this industry. Social media being what it is, we all put our filtered version of our lives out there. And look, am I going to be the one that's posting pictures of me with a top knot on my head and, smudged mascara from the night before because I forgot to wash my makeup off? Probably not. Like, it feels a little indulgent to me, but every opportunity like this where we can say like, hey, you see us on television, but we are just real people with real issues. When I get finished with this call, Casey, I'm probably going to go out on the back patio and pick up the dog poop because the dogs wouldn't go in the yard because it was too wet for them. Like just reminding people that we're totally real, and that's the advice I try to give young people in this industry when it comes to interacting with players and coaches and GMs and presidents and things like that. Like, dude, everybody's real. Everybody poops. Everybody has good days. Everybody has bad days. Some people do it in, 16,000 square foot homes. Some people do it in 1,500 square foot homes. But I think the thing about what we do is the more that you treat people as though they're just people, I think you'll have a lot more success in this industry.
I think that's very important to know, because I think a lot of people that do start out in this industry, whether it's, athletes, coaches, they're always, there's always a spotlight of like who you're supposed to be. But at the end of the day, you can only be the best version of yourself.
Totally.
Okay. Best part of your job.
Best part of my job is getting to go to sporting events and getting to cover sports. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify it, but that's pretty badass, right? I still get the goosebumps whenever I hear a national anthem played, whether I be sitting on my couch watching a game or whether I'm at, the Mercedes-Benz Dome watching, a national championship game. Yeah. I think that we're very, very lucky to work in an industry that is basically adults playing games. I get disappointed, when I see these events become casualty of the current situation we're in. I think today it was just announced that the Little League World Series has been canceled for this fall. That is an event that I've attended with my family. It's fantastic. It's kind of like the culmination of all of the things we love about sports. It's kids and innocence and youth and competition and joy. And so seeing those things like fall by the wayside makes me sad, because I just truly do love what sports encompasses. Do I know that there is a, slimy underbelly to some of these industries, to some of these spaces? Absolutely. But just like I was saying to you, like, we all have warts, and I think that for the most part, sports are fantastic and incredible, and they unite us more than they divide us. Even if it's somebody who is a rival team, somebody who's a fan of a rival team, at the end of the day, I think that being a fan of sports means you understand what somebody else is going through, except for Patriots fans, because nobody understands what they go through, that they win every single season. I don't know what that's like.
Okay, hardest part of your job.
It's probably the schedule, and that's varied at different phases of my career. I alluded to a few moments ago, the working late nights, anchoring late shows, sometimes having to pull an early morning shift. You have to be ready and on when sports are being played. So that often means evenings, weekends, holidays. It's missing out on weddings and baptisms.
Favorite sports book, and then also favorite sports movie.
Favorite book is super tough because there's so many out there. And I always feel like the easiest way to learn a lot about a subject in a very short period of time is to read a book about them. I've read so many, like Andre Agassi's autobiography, Open, was like mind-blowing, really eye-opening. Dominique Moceano's book, I think it was like Off Balance or something like that, really good. I have a ton of football books that I've read. Muck City was one that I really loved, about like guys who grew up in the muck of Florida and like why they have success at the professional level in football. But listen, one of the I wouldn't say first books, but like the one that made the most impact on my career was Take Your Eye Off the Ball. It was when I was first having to cover professional football. I covered high school football, but it was like, I felt like really remedial. But when I first started covering the Packers here in Wisconsin, I don't even know how long ago that was now. Let's just say many years ago. I read, I think it's Pat Kerwin wrote the book, Take Your Eye Off the Ball. And it was so enlightening as to how to cover sports, or how to cover football rather, and how to watch a play and know what was going to happen before it happened, so that you were that much more prepared for then what was going to happen. Like, it was like paying attention to personnel packages instead of like watching the ball, paying attention to the way that the linemen were assembled, like just really like smart little nuanced stuff. And I read it over and over and over and over again because I always found a new little nugget in it. And I often tell women who don't have the same experience covering football because they haven't played the game of football, that it's a huge first step in feeling like you really understand the nuance of the game. So I don't know if it's my favorite book sports wise, but it's definitely the one that like made the most impact on my career that I use as advice for other people in the industry. Favorite sports movie is brutal. Like, so many good sports movies. In fact, recently, you know, as we've been quarantined and isolation and whatnot, my husband and I came up with like these brackets. You know, we were doing like March Madness, but with all these random things. And we did best sports, I think, coaches, right? So I feel like I'm going to take a little page out of that. I will watch Remember the Titans over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. So I feel like that's up there as far as like my favorite sports movies go. But I also love A League of Their Own. Like, I can't not tear up towards the end of A League of Their Own. And I don't know if it's because it's based, you know, around women's sports and a women's league and all of that, or just like talked about like the relationship between sisters. But that one is one that like gets me every time as well. But then again, I'm like a huge Happy Gilmore fan, right? Like, I will watch Adam Sandler play wacky golf every day if I had the opportunity to. So those are probably the top three, you know, that are up there. Mm-hmm. I do take issue a lot of times, Casey, with like these true stories that then get like manipulated and twisted, like with Hollywood and whatnot. Like, I always tell people when they say, oh, what do you think of We Are Marshall? I'm like, We Are Marshall is a fine movie, but it is not biographical. It is not a documentary. It is not what really happened. Mm-hmm. A lot of liberties were taken in the telling of that story. Similarly with like The Rookie, which is another cute family-friendly movie with Dennis Quaid that I love. But again, liberties were taken. So I always warn people, like, don't think that just because you're watching a movie of something that it's like historically accurate. Yeah. So that's kind of like my only one beef with like our industry, like going the Hollywood route and these movies being made, is you just never know what the real details are. And I think a lot of people get caught up in then learning a story. The Blind Side is a good
I was going to say that.
Right? Like, where it's like, okay, some of this is true, but some of this is not. And I think Michael Orr even took exception to some of the details in that movie because they were so fictionalized. So that's my soapbox.
yeah, that bothers me for sure. And it's there's so much money that goes into it, so they want to make it spruced up as much as they can. But that's why I love, 30 for 30s and E60s and all the. Okay, sorry, I have to ask, what is your favorite like ESPN documentary that you've seen?
Obviously the OJ Simpson story was just remarkable. I mean, just who would have thought that something so big and comprehensive could have been so impactful, right? Like, when somebody tells you like, and it's going to be this, long, and you're going, you might have overshot yourself here a little bit, but no, like it was long, and it touched on like the historical and societal and racial conflict and all of that. So that one was remarkable. One of my first dates with my husband, he came over to my place and we watched the one Pony Excess, the one on SMU. And like obviously them getting the death penalty and whatnot. They do a tremendous job. Our films department. I could watch them over and over and over again. But I even like the Dennis Rodman documentary that came out a couple years ago was so well done and so enlightening. Like, who knew some of the things that he had been through, that kind of led to some of the quirkiness, right? And the like idiosyncrasies that we all saw, and we're like, I even said the other day watching The Last Dance, like, we forget what a fantastic basketball player he was because it was overshadowed by the circus that he had surrounding him. So I love that the documentary has been highlighting that. But yeah, there's so many good ones, man. And if nothing else, I told my husband the other day, like, we should be re-watching them. Like, as we're sitting here trying to figure out what to watch on TV, we should just like dip into that catalog and roll the dice and pick one every night.
And this is like a perfect time to read those sports books and sports movies and documentaries. That's what I've been trying to do, just to kind of study up while there isn't actual sports playing right now. And then also, I just want to add this, in the Last Dance, you know, you watch that part about Rodman, and obviously the Last Dance has been incredible, but like when I'm watching, I'm like, oh, I just hope everyone will just go and watch the Rodman 30 for 30 so they understand like the background about him. He's such an interesting person. I thought that 30 for 30 was done so well. Okay, and then a couple fan questions. So before we wrap up, okay, so someone asked, what was your process like getting to ESPN, and what sacrifices did you have to make along the way to make that dream a reality?
Oh gosh, that's one of those, like, when you're in it, like when you're in the muck, when you're in the like tornado, you don't like see it for what it is. It's only like with the benefit of hindsight where you're like, wow, that was really challenging. But I was talking about this a little bit earlier, and I'm not sure if we got cut off or not, so you'll have to help me out with that. But you know, the hours that we work in this industry are really odd, and that can be really stressful for families. It can be really stressful for kids. You know, you don't want to miss things, but you have to miss things because of when sports take place. When I was working in Chicago, I was still living in Milwaukee. At the beginning of my time there, I was doing the midnight show. And so I would get offset at 12:30. I would hustle out to my car and I would go way above the speed limit to get home to Milwaukee by 2 a.m. You know, and then it's, if I had somebody watching my son, letting them off the clock, maybe hitting the pillow at 2:30 and then trying to sleep until 10 a.m., you know, and like then getting him ready for the day and all of that stuff. Those are the sacrifices that you make. You know, at the beginning, there's just not a lot of money in this industry. I wish it were different. I wish that people, you know, could figure out a way to make more money, but you have to really pinch pennies and you have to go without a lot, and you have to secondhand store your blazers and your clothes and your wardrobes, and every express 40% off sale. I'll tell you what, I was there, right? I was a frequent person at the outlet malls, you know, just trying to figure out how I could put outfits together for very inexpensive. So it's all of that stuff from a financial standpoint. We talked about missing holidays and missing family events and weddings and baptisms and just celebrations that other people don't understand why you can't be there. We have friends that have gotten married in October when we're covering baseball. It's like, cool, the gifts in the mail, because we're not going to be able to get down there, you know, during that time. You know, we're very busy, college football and Major League Baseball. But also I think you sacrifice privacy. You know, being in this industry, especially on television at the network level, there are probably some things that I wish people didn't know about my family that they just do. And so you have to be okay with people knowing things because you're out there in the public eye. Is it to the extreme level of others? No. I'm watching right now as Jay Cutler and Kristen Cavallari's marriage seems to be dissolving in front of our eyes, and the details that keep emerging are just so sad. And you know, and I think, like, my goodness, thank the Lord that I got divorced, you know, 10 years ago, and I was not a major public figure, so that people could dissect every single detail of, you know, the fracture of my marriage. You know, that's really sad. So like, those are some of the things that you just have to kind of deal with. You also sacrifice, you know, this idea that you can't be criticized. You know, we put ourselves out there on this public platform, and we kind of open ourselves up to criticism. We open ourselves up to people who just want to hate and be spiteful. And do I think that it's right? No, I don't. I don't think that anybody should be able to use me as their personal punching bag. But I understand that it's a part of the industry. I got a little bit annoyed, just like side story, last week during the NFL draft when people were criticizing the interiors of people's homes. Like, you know, there was criticism of Joe Burrow's mom's curtains. And I was like, first of all, we would never be in Joe Burrow's living room if it weren't for this unusual circumstance of COVID-19 essentially snatching the draft from Las Vegas's clutches. So forgive Mrs. Burrow if she didn't bring in an entire, an interior decorator to like revamp her living room while her son was being the #1 overall pick. Like I was like, oh, the pettiness of some people, just kind of like gets under my skin. My husband asked me like why it was bothering me. And I said, because they didn't open themselves up to this. They weren't like, oh, what would be really great is as we're having like one of the best moments of our son's sports career, if people could like eviscerate and make jokes about our curtains, you know what I mean? The difference again, like I said, is being a public figure, in television and whatnot, you kind of open yourselves up to being criticized. So I'm working through that still, right? 20 years into the industry, and I still have to ignore comments on Twitter rather than get into a pissing match. But I think again, and this, the positives outweigh the negatives. Like we are so fortunate. I thought we were in a recession-proof industry. Turns out we were just in an industry that could handle everything except a global pandemic. So again, I try to laugh at insanity, try to enjoy what situation we're in right now. But there's a lot of things that you don't realize are realities in the sports broadcasting industry until you're in them. And look, there are a lot of people, Casey, who decide at one point or another that it's not for them and they don't want to do it anymore. But so far for me, the positives have outweighed the negatives.
That is great to hear. And what do you attribute your success to?
Hard work. I work really hard. Early on in my career, I didn't really know what I didn't know. So like even that like naivete really benefited me. I have a confidence. Probably early on, it was a misplaced confidence. There were people who probably looked at me and said, she has no right to be as, cocky as she is. But I was very lucky. I grew up in a family where my parents really believed in us and encouraged our goals and encouraged our dreams and pushed and pushed and pushed. Never made us feel like we were inadequate or incapable of accomplishing something. So I tell parents all the time, like, hey man, that's your role. Your role is to be the voice that drowns out all the people who tell someone they can't do something. So I was very lucky to grow up in an environment like that. And I think I try to be as authentic as possible. I think the more you try to fake and phony your way through things, the harder it is to keep up with the lies, to keep up with the persona that you've created. And then people will see the cracks. And the minute somebody starts to think that you're a fake, then you kind of lose that credibility across the board. Why would I believe you when you tell me this when you're clearly, a poser in this space? Yeah. So I think those are probably the things that have benefited me the most in this business.
Well, Jen, that's all I have, but you're talking about being authentic. I mean, I've watched you for a few years now on ESPN, and who I see on TV is who I'm talking to right now. And I think that's really hard to find sometimes with, people in the industry, but you're very authentic and real. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. If anybody has any questions out there, please, Casey, let them know. They can always reach out to me via email or Twitter. Twitter's probably the easiest way. The emails, I don't know about you, but like I drown in emails. I'm like the Princess Bride when her and Wesley go underneath the quicksand. And then they come up and they're like, oh, that's how I feel when I open my inbox every single morning. But happy to help and happy to offer as much encouragement to anybody who's interested in this field.